What if this Halloween weekend could have turned into something far darker than anyone imagined? Picture it, families out trick-or-treating, kids in costumes, music playing, laughter filling the air, and in the shadows, a deadly plan set to strike. But according to the FBI, that nightmare scenario almost became reality in Michigan. Until they stopped it just in time. This is not a movie. This is a real story. One that unfolded in the suburbs of Detroit and was only revealed hours before millions of Americans celebrated Halloween. So what exactly happened in Michigan? Who was behind this alleged plot? And what does it tell us about the state of security inside the United States today? Let's break it all down. In the early morning of October 31st, 2025, FBI Director Kash Patel took to social media with a shocking statement. Federal agents had thwarted a potential terrorist attack in Michigan. Multiple arrests had been made, and according to Patel, the suspects were plotting a violent act that was intended to take place over the Halloween weekend. Within minutes, news outlets from NBC and ABC to CNN and Al Jazeera confirmed Patel's announcement. It was official. The FBI had just foiled a potential terrorist plot inside the United States. Law enforcement sources confirmed that the arrests happened in the Detroit metro area, specifically in Dearborn and Inkster, two suburbs that have long been part of Michigan's diverse cultural landscape. FBI agents and local police were seen moving in and out of residential neighborhoods throughout the morning, conducting searches and detaining suspects. Dearborn police posted on social media, assuring residents that there was no threat to the community at this time. But behind that calm statement, the intensity of what federal agents had prevented began to sink in. As of this recording, few details have been released. The FBI has not disclosed who the suspects are, what their motive was, or what exactly they were planning. There's no word yet on whether the suspects are linked to any domestic or international terror groups. But the fact that this alleged plot was timed to coincide with one of America's biggest family holidays, Halloween, makes it deeply unsettling. Now, let's pause for a second. Because this is where things get serious. When the FBI uses the phrase, potential terrorist attack, that's not something they say lightly. It means intelligence agents picked up credible threats, possibly through online chatter, surveillance, or human sources, and acted before violence could erupt. In other words, whatever this was, it was real enough for the nation's top law enforcement agency to move in fast. Why Michigan? Why now? If you look at recent years, Michigan has unfortunately found itself at the center of several high-profile security concerns. Remember the 2020 plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer? That plan, led by a domestic extremist group, was also foiled by the FBI. More recently, in 2025, another man in Detroit with National Guard ties was arrested for plotting a mass shooting at a U.S. military base. So Michigan, with its mix of large metropolitan areas, military presence, and politically charged history, has remained on the radar of federal counterterrorism investigators. And then there's Halloween itself, a night of crowds, disguises, and chaos. It's one of the easiest nights for bad actors to hide in plain sight. Tens of thousands of people on the streets, masked faces everywhere, minimal visibility, and distracted law enforcement. For a terrorist or extremist, that's the perfect cover. If you wanted to stage an attack that would cause national shockwaves, Halloween weekend would be the ideal time. Federal officials aren't saying whether the suspects were inspired by foreign organizations or domestic extremist ideologies. But this uncertainty, the not knowing, has left many Americans uneasy. In a time when the U.S. has increasingly shifted its focus toward overseas crises, from Gaza and Israel to Ukraine and Taiwan, this story is a stark reminder that the homeland threat never really went away. So let's talk about the significance of what happened here. The first takeaway: the FBI is still actively intercepting potential terror plots within the U.S. Despite the perception that domestic security has stabilized since the early 2000s, the truth is that threats have merely evolved. They're more decentralized, more digital, and harder to predict. The second takeaway: the FBI's speed and coordination suggest this was a preemptive strike, meaning agents likely had intelligence weeks or even months in advance. This wasn't luck. This was the result of surveillance, human intelligence, and perhaps digital tracking that pinpointed the plot before it could materialize. But this success also raises questions. How transparent should the government be about terror prevention? Should the public know more details, or does secrecy actually make us safer? Every time the FBI announces a foiled plot, we get the same balance problem. Public reassurance versus operational confidentiality. Too much information can compromise investigations. Too little can breed distrust. For now, Patel's announcement is being interpreted as both a victory and a warning. A victory, because the system worked. A warning, because it's a sign that potential attackers are still out there, planning, waiting, adapting. And here's the geopolitical angle that most people overlook. Events like this don't just affect the US. They send signals globally. America's allies are watching closely, from Europe to the Middle East, analyzing how effective the FBI's counter-terror capabilities remain 2 decades after the 9/11 era. Meanwhile, extremist networks are also watching, taking notes on what went wrong, adapting their strategies, and looking for the next soft target. Every plot stopped in one country is studied in another. This is how the global security chessboard works. Every move, every arrest, every failed plot, every headline, becomes part of a larger feedback loop of adaptation between security forces and extremist actors. Back home in Michigan, communities are still processing the news. Residents of Dearborn and Inkster woke up to FBI vehicles and news crews, unsure whether the danger had passed or just begun. Parents wondered if it was still safe to take their kids trick-or-treating. Local officials moved quickly to calm fears, emphasizing that there was no continuing threat. But fear doesn't always listen to press releases. In neighborhoods that have already been stereotyped or scrutinized after past investigations, this incident risks reigniting social tension, something authorities will have to handle carefully in the days ahead. From a policy perspective, the Michigan incident may prompt renewed debate in Washington about domestic terrorism laws, surveillance powers, and interagency coordination. Over the past few years, counterterrorism funding inside the U.S. has gradually shifted towards cybercrime and international threats. This case might change that. You can expect politicians and security analysts to call for stronger local-federal partnerships and expanded intelligence sharing between law enforcement agencies across states. It also revives the question of privacy. For every plot foiled, how much surveillance was required? How many social media accounts were monitored? How many conversations flagged by AI? The balance between safety and civil liberties has always been razor-thin, and this Michigan case brings that debate back to center stage. For the average American, though, the lesson is simpler. Stay aware. Stay alert. Report suspicious behavior. That's not paranoia, it's participation. National security isn't just the job of the FBI. It's a shared responsibility between agencies and the people they protect. So, what happens next? Federal prosecutors are likely preparing charges, but the details could take weeks to emerge. We'll eventually find out who the suspects are, what their motivations were, and how close they actually came to carrying out their plan. Until then, the only certainty is that the FBI believes it prevented what could have been a deadly Halloween weekend for countless families in Michigan. As you finish watching this, think about the bigger picture. The war on terror never really ended, it just changed shape. It moved from foreign battlefields to digital chat rooms, from massive networks to small cells of radicalized individuals hiding in plain sight. And sometimes, like this week, the front line runs right through an American suburb. This is the story of how one weekend, one city, and one federal investigation might have stopped the unthinkable. Because sometimes, the scariest thing about Halloween isn't the ghosts or the costumes. It's the danger you never even knew was there. If you found this analysis helpful and want to stay informed about stories that shape our world, from global conflicts to national security and major geopolitical developments, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This channel brings you the truth behind the headlines, without the noise, without the bias. Just facts, context, and perspective. I'm your host, faceless, but factual, and this was your deep dive into the FBI's foiled Halloween terror plot in Michigan. Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.